He woke up beside the chief's daughter. At dawn, 321 warriors waited for the wedding. He came there for work but also to escape a life that had left him tired and empty. In the city, he was just another face. In the valley, people noticed him. They watched how he spoke, how he worked, and how he respected their ways. He was careful from the beginning. He learned quickly that this community lived by strong rules, passed down through generations. Honor was not just a word here, it was a way of life. Every action had meaning. Every mistake had a price. He listened more than he spoke. He helped where he could. Slowly, people began to trust him. The chief ruled the tribe with calm authority. He was not loud or cruel. His power came from wisdom and fairness. Everyone respected him, especially his daughter. She was known for her calm nature and sharp mind. She did not speak much in public, but when she did, people listened. She helped the women of the tribe, cared for the elders, and understood the old traditions better than many men twice her age. The man and the chief's daughter crossed paths often, but never in a way that raised concern. Sometimes they spoke during daylight while others were around. Sometimes they only exchanged a polite nod. There was no secret behavior, no broken rules. Still, something unspoken existed, something neither of them tried to name. That night the tribe gathered for a celebration. The harvest had been good. Food was prepared, fires were lit, and music filled the open space near the chief's home. Laughter echoed through the valley. Even the elders smiled more than usual. The man joined in, careful not to overstep. He ate, talked, and listened to stories about the tribe's past. As the night grew deeper, people began to rest where they could. Some slept near the fires. Others returned to their homes. The man felt tired in a way that was heavy and sudden. Someone offered him a place to rest inside the compound, where guests were sometimes allowed to sleep during festivals. He accepted, thankful for the kindness. The room was simple. Woven mats covered the floor. The air smelled of wood, smoke, and herbs. He lay down, his mind still full of voices and music. Sleep came quickly. When morning light touched his face, he woke with confusion. The sounds outside were quiet, too quiet. As he moved, he realized he was not alone. Lying beside him was the chief's daughter. His heart began to race. He sat up slowly, afraid to make noise. Nothing improper had happened. He knew that clearly. They were both fully clothed. The distance between them showed respect. Still, the situation itself was serious. In this tribe, waking beside the chief's daughter was not something that could be explained away easily. She woke moments later. Her face showed no panic, only understanding. She sat up and looked at him calmly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Words were not needed to know the weight of what had happened. "It will be known," she said softly. He nodded. His mouth felt dry. He wanted to apologize, to explain, but explanations meant little in the face of tradition. Outside, footsteps began to echo. Voices whispered. Someone had seen. Someone always saw. The sun rose higher, and with it came movement. Men gathered quietly near the chief's compound, not in anger but in order. Warriors dressed in traditional clothing arrived one by one. They stood in lines, silent and alert. By the time the morning light fully covered the valley, 321 warriors were waiting. The man watched from a distance, his chest heavy. He had never seen so many people stand so still. Their presence was not a threat, but it was powerful. They were there to witness, to protect the law, and to ensure honor was kept. The chief emerged slowly from his home. His face showed no rage, no shock, only seriousness. He looked at his daughter first, then at the man. He said nothing for a long moment. The silence felt longer than any shout. The man stepped forward slightly, lowering his head in respect. He did not try to run. He did not argue. He knew that whatever came next would decide his future. The chief raised his hand, signaling for calm. The warriors remained still. The tribe gathered behind them, watching, waiting. This was not just about one night. It was about tradition, responsibility, and choices that could not be undone. As the morning breeze moved through the valley, the man understood one thing clearly. His life before this moment was already over. Whatever path he walked next would be shaped by the decision that came with the rising sun. The air felt heavy as the sun climbed higher. The warriors stayed in their places, calm and quiet, like statues made of patience and duty. No one shouted. No one pushed forward. The silence itself felt like a rule that no one dared to break. The man stood with his hands by his sides, his heart beating fast but his face steady. He knew fear would not help him now. The chief finally spoke, his voice deep but controlled. He did not accuse. He did not ask for excuses. He simply asked for truth. His words were few, but each one carried weight. The man listened carefully, understanding that in this place, speaking too much could be worse than saying nothing at all. The chief's daughter stepped forward next. Her movements were calm, her posture strong. She looked at her father with respect, then turned slightly toward the elders who had gathered nearby. She explained what had happened in clear and simple words. There was no shame in her voice, no attempt to hide anything. She said that no rule had been broken by intention. Circumstances had brought them to the same resting place, nothing more. The elders listened closely. Some closed their eyes, thinking. Others watched the man carefully, studying his face, his posture, his silence. They were not searching for fear. They were looking for honesty. The chief nodded slowly. He knew his daughter well. Her words carried truth because she did not fear truth. Still, tradition was not built only on intention. It was built on symbols, meanings, and responsibility. In this tribe, where someone woke mattered almost as much as how they lived, the man was asked to speak. He stepped forward, careful with every movement. He lowered his head before speaking, showing respect. He said he never meant to bring trouble or dishonor. He explained how he had been offered a place to rest, how he had fallen asleep without knowing who else was there. His voice did not shake, but his words were humble. He did not defend himself strongly. He did not blame anyone. When he finished, the chief raised his hand again. The elders began to speak among themselves in low voices. The tribe waited. Time seemed to stretch. The man felt the weight of every second. He thought about his past life, the road that had brought him here, and how quickly everything could be taken away. Finally, the chief spoke again. He said that the tribe would not rush judgment. Anger had no place in decisions of honor. The warriors were not there to punish, but to witness and protect tradition. Their number was not meant to frighten, but to remind everyone that the law belonged to all. The chief then spoke of the old ways. He explained that when something like this happened, it created a bond that could not be ignored. Even if nothing improper had occurred, the situation itself carried meaning. In the eyes of the tribe, responsibility followed meaning. The man listened closely. He understood now that this was not about guilt. It was about what came next. The chief offered him a choice, spoken clearly so all could hear. The man could accept responsibility and remain in the tribe, honoring its rules for the rest of his life. This path meant marriage, duty, and service. It meant giving up his old life completely. The second choice was to leave the valley before sunset and never return. No punishment would follow, no one would chase him, but the door would close forever. The words settled into the air like dust after footsteps. The tribe remained silent. Even the birds seemed quieter. The man felt his chest tighten. Both paths were heavy in different ways. Leaving meant freedom, but also loss. Staying meant commitment, but also belonging. He looked around at the faces he had come to know. People who had shared food with him, taught him their ways, trusted him slowly over time. He looked at the chief's daughter. She did not look at him with demand or fear. Her eyes held calm acceptance, as if she already understood that whatever choice he made, he would have to live with it fully. The elders watched carefully. This moment was a test, not just for the man, but for the strength of tradition itself. They wanted to see if honor still had meaning in a changing world. The man asked for time to think. The chief agreed. He was given until the sun reached its highest point. Until then, he was free to walk, to breathe, to consider his future. He stepped away from the gathering and walked toward the edge of the valley. The land was quiet, unchanged by human worry. He thought about how he had arrived here with nothing but hope and exhaustion. How the tribe had given him work, trust, and a sense of purpose he had not known before. He also thought about responsibility. In his old life, responsibility had been something he avoided. Here, it stood before him clearly, demanding an answer. As the sun rose higher, he returned. The warriors still stood in place. The chief waited patiently. The tribe gathered again, forming a wide circle. The man stopped in the center. He took a deep breath. Whatever he said now would shape everything that followed. The chief looked at him and asked for his answer. The valley seemed to hold its breath. The man stood still for a moment before speaking. He could feel every eye on him, not judging but waiting. The wind moved gently through the valley, carrying the smell of earth and wood. He took a slow breath, steadying his thoughts. In that quiet space, he understood something clearly. Running away would be easy, but it would leave him empty again. He lifted his head and spoke in a calm voice. He said he would stay. A soft movement passed through the crowd, not loud enough to be called a sound, but strong enough to be felt. The warriors did not move, yet their presence shifted. The elders watched closely. The chief's daughter lowered her eyes briefly, not in relief but in acceptance. This was not a promise of comfort. It was a promise of responsibility. The chief nodded once. He did not smile. This decision was too serious for smiles. He asked the man if he understood what staying truly meant. The man answered honestly. He said he understood that staying meant giving up his old life, his freedom to leave whenever he wished, and his right to live only for himself. He said he was ready to learn, to serve, and to respect the ways of the tribe. The chief listened carefully. Then he began to ask questions, not sharp or angry ones, but deep ones. He asked why the man wanted to stay. He asked what honor meant to him. He asked how he would act if times became difficult. The man answered slowly, choosing his words with care. He said honor to him meant standing by the consequences of his actions, even when they were not planned. He said he wanted to stay because, for the first time in his life, he felt that his presence mattered. He spoke of service not as a duty forced upon him, but as a way to grow into someone better. The elders murmured softly among themselves. They were not impressed by strong words, but they respected honesty. The chief remained silent for a long moment, studying the man's face, his posture, his calm. Finally, he spoke again. He said the choice had been made, but acceptance would come through actions, not words. The warriors were given a signal to lower their stance. Some rested their hands, others relaxed their shoulders. It was not an end, but a change. The atmosphere shifted from judgment to preparation. The chief announced that the man would remain under watch, not as a prisoner, but as someone stepping into a new role. He would begin learning the responsibilities expected of him immediately. There would be no delay, no celebration yet. Tradition required proof. The man was given simple tasks at first. He helped carry water, prepare food, and assist the elders. These were not punishments. In the tribe, such work was a sign of humility and readiness to serve. He accepted every task without complaint. The chief's daughter did not stay close to him, nor did she avoid him. Their interactions were respectful and careful. She guided him when guidance was needed, explaining customs and expectations. She never spoke as someone above him, but as someone walking the same path from a different place. Days passed. The tribe watched quietly. They noticed how he rose early, how he listened more than he spoke, how he corrected his mistakes without anger. Some warriors tested him gently, asking questions or giving him small challenges. He met each one with patience. At night, he often sat alone, thinking about how quickly his life had changed. There were moments of doubt, moments when the weight of his choice pressed heavily on him, but there was also a growing sense of purpose. Each day felt earned. The elders met again after several days. They discussed what they had seen. They spoke about effort, consistency, and respect. When the chief joined them, he listened carefully. This was not only about the man. It was about the tribe's future and the strength of their traditions. The chief's daughter was asked to speak as well. She spoke honestly. She said the man did not act out of fear or pride. She said he showed willingness to learn and accept guidance. Her words were calm and balanced, without praise or defense. The chief made his decision known to the tribe. He said the man had taken the first steps correctly. He announced that preparations for the next stage would begin. This did not mean celebration yet, but formal acceptance into the path of responsibility. The warriors acknowledged the decision with quiet respect. The tribe began to shift its focus from judgment to preparation. The valley felt different now, less tense, more steady. The man was told that his learning would deepen. He would be taught the history of the tribe, the meaning behind their customs, and the importance of unity. He understood that this was not a reward, but a test that would last a lifetime. As the sun set that evening, he stood at the edge of the valley and looked out over the land. It no longer felt like a place he was passing through. It felt like a place he was being shaped by. He knew challenges lay ahead. He knew there would be moments when he would feel lost or unsure. But he also knew that he had chosen this path with open eyes. That night, the valley rested under a quiet sky. The decision had been made, but the story was far from over. The days that followed felt different from anything the man had known before. Life no longer moved without direction. Every morning began with purpose. He woke before sunrise, washed his face with cool water, and prepared himself for the work ahead. The tribe did not treat him as special, and that was exactly how he wanted it. He wanted to earn his place, not be given it. The chief watched from a distance. He did not guide the man directly. Leadership in his eyes meant allowing people to grow on their own. The elders, however, continued to teach. They shared stories of the past, lessons about patience, unity, and balance. These stories were not told as long speeches. They came in short moments, during work, during meals, during walks through the land. The man listened carefully. He began to understand that the tribe's strength came from its ability to move as one. No one acted only for themselves. Every choice was measured by how it affected others. This way of thinking was new to him, but it felt right. The chief's daughter remained steady beside this changing life. She never rushed anything. She never pushed him to prove himself faster. Her calm presence became a source of strength, not through words but through example. She showed him how to speak with elders, how to help without drawing attention, and how to stand firm without becoming proud. Slowly, the tribe began to accept him. Children greeted him openly. Elders nodded when he passed. Warriors included him in daily routines. These small signs meant more than any ceremony. When the time came, the chief called a gathering. This time there was no tension in the air. The warriors stood again, but not as witnesses of judgment. They stood as guardians of tradition. The tribe gathered as one, forming a wide circle under the open sky. The chief spoke clearly and calmly. He said the man had shown respect through actions, not promises. He said responsibility had been accepted without complaint. He said the path ahead would still be demanding, but the first steps had been taken with honor. Then the chief spoke of the union. He explained that marriage in this tribe was not just between two people. It was between families, between past and future, between different worlds coming together. This union would remind the tribe that tradition could remain strong while still allowing growth. The man stood quietly, his heart full but steady. He did not feel pride. He felt gratitude. The ceremony was simple. There was no loud celebration, no display meant to impress. The tribe valued meaning over noise. Elders spoke blessings for unity and patience. The warriors stood as witnesses, not as guards. The land itself seemed to listen. As the sun rose, the union was complete. Life after that day did not suddenly become easy. Responsibility grew heavier, not lighter. The man learned to make decisions that affected others. He learned to listen before acting. He learned that strength often came from silence and patience. There were mistakes along the way. Some days he felt unsure. Some nights he questioned himself. But each challenge became a lesson, not a failure. The tribe guided him when needed, corrected him when necessary, and trusted him when he showed growth. Years passed. The valley changed slowly with time, but the values remained strong. The man was no longer seen as an outsider. He was known as someone who chose responsibility when escape was easier, someone who stayed when leaving would have cost less. The chief grew older, but his wisdom did not fade. When he finally stepped back from leadership, the tribe did not feel fear. They felt prepared. Tradition had been protected not by force, but by understanding. The story of the morning when 321 warriors waited became a lesson told to the younger generation, not as a warning but as an example of how one moment, handled with respect and honesty, could change a life forever. The man often thought back to that morning. He remembered the silence, the waiting, the choice. He understood now that the dawn did not bring judgment. It brought direction, and in choosing to face that direction, he found not just a place to live, but a life worth standing for.